When The Big Bang Theory introduced us to Sheldon Cooper, we were given glimpses of a family history both quirky and fractured, none more poignant than the shadow of his father, George Cooper Sr., whose reputation was mostly that of a bumbling, beer-drinking absentee parent. And somewhere, almost lost in the science and sarcasm, was Georgie, Sheldon's older brother, whose adulthood was painted with contempt and tension. But young Sheldon, and more recently Georgie and Mandy's first marriage, has been quietly rewriting that history, and season the 2nd of May just be where the biggest redemption, and most devastating emotional reversal, takes place. A family rewritten. One laugh at a time. Young Sheldon did what few prequels dare attempt. It dared to humanize a character posthumously maligned by another show. George Sr., once written off as a flawed and forgettable man, was shown in young Sheldon as deeply caring and struggling under the weight of expectations, financially, emotionally, even parentally. Now, Georgie and Mandy's first marriage, a spin-off that extends that world further, is focusing its attention on another misunderstood Cooper, Georgie. No longer just the buffoonish brother of a genius, Georgie is now a father, a husband technically, and a man in the messy early stages of adulthood. Mandy, his partner, is sharp, no-nonsense, and refreshingly grounded, a perfect foil for Georgie's rough edges. Their dynamic is comedic, heartfelt, and surprisingly mature, capturing the spirit of late 20s chaos in a way that feels honest. But here's where the tragedy creeps in. Undoing a tragedy, from the future. In The Big Bang Theory, adult Sheldon shares multiple pieces of his backstory, including the difficult relationship he had with Georgie. One of the most heartbreaking admissions came when Sheldon talked about how Georgie resented him and how the two were estranged for years. But Georgie and Mandy's first marriage, especially if it continues on its current emotional arc, has the power to undo that narrative. By showing us Georgie in the early stages of becoming a father, struggling to grow into someone dependable, the show builds empathy and dimensionality. He's not just a failed tire salesman with a chip on his shoulder, he's a guy trying to figure out life one misstep at a time. Watching him grow close to his daughter Cece, navigate marriage, real or not, and support Mandy, paints a new, warmer portrait of the man we were told Sheldon barely spoke to for years. If done right, Season 2 could make a bold choice, hinting that Sheldon's memory of his brother wasn't just incomplete, it was biased, even tragically misunderstood. But this redemption might come at a price, the inevitable sadness that must follow. Here lies the dramatic tension. Georgie and Mandy's first marriage can only undo the tragedy of sibling estrangement by introducing another one. In the Cooper family timeline, there is still a storm cloud looming, George Sr.'s death. The groundwork laid in young Sheldon's Season 6 showed signs of an impending tragedy. Season 7 is likely to bring that arc full circle. If Georgie and Mandy's first marriage follows closely in time, the loss of George Sr. would become a central, if not defining, event for the young couple. And that's where the sad story lies. Georgie, trying to become a good father, must do so while losing his own. The poetic parallel is too strong to ignore. As George Sr. exits the stage, perhaps misunderstood until the very end, Georgie could find himself stepping into the role his father once struggled with, an imperfect but deeply loving provider. This would be the emotional crucible that reshapes Georgie. Not just for the audience, but for Sheldon too. Maybe we'll see Sheldon, still young and emotionally guarded, start to misinterpret Georgie's grief as anger. Maybe Georgie, crushed by the responsibility suddenly dumped on him, lashes out or withdraws. In short, the very tragedy that brings Georgie closer to the audience might be the one that breaks his bond with Sheldon, creating the estrangement we know is coming. The power of perspective. One of the most clever tools the Big Bang Theory universe has been using is the unreliable narrator trope. Sheldon's memories are brilliant, but emotionally stunted. He remembers pain, but not necessarily the reasons. He remembers slights, but not the surrounding context. What Georgie and Mandy's first marriage can do is offer the other side of the story. Season 2 could explore moments where Georgie tries to reach out to Sheldon, only to be rejected. Or scenes where he's protecting Sheldon in the background, unnoticed and unappreciated. If that emotional groundwork is laid, then Sheldon's later regret, seen briefly in the finale of Young Sheldon, becomes all the more devastating. We, the audience, will know what Sheldon didn't, and that's powerful television. Comedy wrapped around grief. Let's not forget that this is still a sitcom. The genius of these spin-offs lies in their ability to wrap grief in humor. The Cooper family, despite all their issues, is endlessly funny, sometimes intentionally, often not. Season 2 could see Georgie and Mandy trying to plan a wedding while dealing with diapers, broken water heaters, meddling in-laws, and existential grief. There's room for both laughter and loss. Imagine this. A scene where Georgie finds an old voicemail from his dad, giving one last half-baked piece of advice about parenting. It's not profound. It's probably about spark plugs or brisket. But it hits Georgie like a freight train. And in that moment, the entire arc comes full circle. He's no longer just George Jr. He's his own man, shaped by his father's flaws and strength alike. Conclusion. A future made whole by the past. Georgie and Mandy's first marriage season 2 holds a rare opportunity to reverse-engineer tragedy into something beautiful. By giving Georgie depth, the show can cast a new light on Sheldon's cold recollections. But to make that transformation feel real, it has to walk through another valley of sorrow, the death of George Sr., the rise of responsibility, and the slow unraveling of a sibling bond. And maybe, just maybe, that sadness will eventually lead to reconciliation. Maybe not on this show, not even in this decade. But someday, viewers may look back and realize, the tragedy of the Big Bang Theory wasn't a broken family. It was a misunderstood one. And that is a story worth telling. Would you like me to expand this into a script-style version for a fan episode, or adapt it for a blog post format?